When you're on your sales call with a prospect and you're asking your discovery questions, you want to make sure that near the end of that discovery, you ask them very clearly, what is the timeline for this project? When do you want to start receiving the benefits of our product or service? When do you want to be implemented, up and running, however you phrase it? But you've got to get that date. See, if they don't give you a date, well, then they're not really a qualified prospect at this point. Not to say they won't be in the future, but if they don't know when they want it, if their answer isn't end of this month, end of the quarter, or even sometime next year, if they just say, yeah, I'm not really sure, I gotta check with the board, let me check with my leadership team, or whatever they say, that's not some specific date, well, then they're just not ready. And you know that you don't need to spend time on this. You've got other prospects that are more ready to go. The timing is right. They're more serious. And that's where you should spend your time. So it doesn't mean you don't follow up with them. Of course you do. But just know that if they don't have a time, you don't have a deal. Now, assuming they do give you a time, you want to pay attention to when that is, because you don't want to waste your time or be a pest to them. So if they say, hey, I want this thing in by the end of the month, well, then make sure that you're staying with it and being super responsive, probably daily between now and the end of the month, to make sure you hit that for them. But if they say, oh, sometime next quarter or third quarter of next year, well, that's okay too. You might still have a deal, but you just know you don't need to talk to them every day or probably even every week. You can probably talk to them every couple months until that time comes closer, and then you can double check, hey, what's your timeline looking now that it's been a few months? You thought this quarter, here we are, how's it looking? And you can start getting a little bit tighter date. And maybe it moves again, but that's okay. So you don't want to waste your time on something that's not going to happen. There's no sense calling them every week if they're not ready for 6 months. And certainly on the flip side, you don't want to miss calling them every day to keep the project moving because you're not sure when they want to go, so you don't necessarily pay attention to it. You think, well, I'll just call them next week. Well, maybe they wanted to move really quickly. So you want to get that clear. So that's the first reason that you want to make sure you're clear, is that you don't waste time or miss an opportunity. The second reason you want to make sure that, or when you get that date, the second thing you can do with it is that when they start ghosting you, you can follow back up and say, hey, listen, I've called you a couple days in a row now with no response, or I sent you a couple emails and I haven't heard back. You had told me when we talked the first time 2 weeks ago that you wanted to be up and running by the end of the month. Is that still your timeline? So you can kind of jujitsu it with them and reverse it on them and say, hey, this is the timeline you gave me. I'm not being a pest. I'm not harassing you here. I'm trying to be responsive to your date. I'm trying to help you get the results you said you wanted by the time you said you wanted them. Now, maybe something's changed. Maybe they can't get their budget approved, or maybe they've got other priorities. That's okay. But you need to know, and they need to communicate back to you, hey, has something changed? Because if not, it's your obligation to help them get those results that they said they wanted. And so you need to be on top of this. So is that still the date? And if it's not, well, that's okay. We can change it. But you also, again, don't want to waste your time if something's changed and now it's going to be 3 or 4 months, or they don't know till they get their budget or whatever it is. So, because if you don't get that date and they start ghosting you, you've got nothing, because you don't know. They didn't say they needed it at a certain time, so you don't know. Now you're just guessing, hey, I should probably call them every day or every week or every other week and see where they're at. And then they keep saying, yeah, I'm not sure, or they just flat ghost you. You got to get a date. Get a date. And don't be afraid to get that date. It's not for you. You're not helping you. I mean, it is helping you prioritize, but assuming they have a firm short-term date, it's helping you prioritize them near the top of your list to help them get results. This isn't about you. This is about them and you helping them get their results. And if their date's far out, well, then you're not going to bother them. And so, again, beneficial to them to not have you on them every week or so when they don't need you yet. So, of course, this is going to help you make sure you're putting your attention to the right customers and right prospects, but ultimately it's in service of them to make sure that you deliver what you're promising to them on the timeline that they want, so that they're getting what they need with your help when they want it.